Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 26 series, Rescue the Rockies. And just want to start off this episode with two notes in response to the last episode. One, need to thank Blade Staff, Jackhammer Possessor, and several others who identified or commented on the fact that when we credited our former scout for developing and finding a very high-end prospect named Jose Panjas last episode, we were looking at his ratings relative to single A baseball, where he looks like a complete monster. But you can see here with our new scout, when we look at him relative to the majors, he is a much less exciting prospect, but still definitely for someone who was a pure scout finding an interesting player who does have the potential to be useful for us down the line. So apologies for my excitement in misleading you by thinking we had found this true diamond in the rough as far as the potential that he had. And also, though, I do feel less bad having fired our former scout to replace him with Mr. Hill, given that one of the last things that our former scout did for us was not actually finding an incredibly high ceiling prospect in Mr. Panjas. And the more significant issue to talk about is the reactions that I asked for from the worldwide scouting department to the series of trades that we've made over the past few episodes, and definitely a mixed reaction from the worldwide scouting department. I'd say probably 2/3 of the feedback has been these were good trades for the team, and in most cases fairly reasonable in terms of the prices to get some of those big bad contracts, notably Senzatella, Freeland, and Bryant, off the books. But about 1/3 of the feedback has kind of been, you've defeated the difficulty and purpose of the save by getting rid of those big bad contracts, and it would be much more realistic if you just kind of lived with them over the next 2 to 3 seasons. And I definitely get that input. It's something that I've thought about. Looking at the trades away, since all three of them were going to be on the books in 2026, we save almost $40 million in 2026. Bryant and Freeland were going to be on the books in 2027, so we save a little over $30 million there. And then even in 2028, when only Bryant would have still been on the books, we'll be saving about $19 million that year. So it's not immaterial, the dollars that we're saving. What I would say is that we did give up in those trades 9 guys total in their early to mid-20s, including a couple of the better prospects in our organization in Chase Dollander and Zach Veen, to get those deals done. So it's not like we just wiped those contracts off the books without any cost to us. And in the case of Freeland and Bryant, we are retaining parts of those contracts for the next 2 to 3 years. That being said, definitely get that, and certainly got some of the similar feedback when we did our mini-series with the Los Angeles Angels, where we ended up trading away Mike Trout early. And get that in real life, it's probably unrealistic for the Rockies to get out of all 3 of those contracts. So I hear where people are coming from. I guess what I ultimately come down to is, if I just kept those contracts on the books next 2 or 3 seasons, our Rockies are going to likely be a very crappy team for the next 2 to 3 seasons. And I'm not thinking, by freeing up $20 million 3 years from now, that I'm going to magically fix and turn these Rockies over the next 2 to 3 seasons in a great team. But I think certainly if we had kept those guys, we would be a crappy team for the next 2 to 3 years. And I think with those contracts off the books, we've got potential to be a bad to mediocre team by 2 to 3 years from now. So I think we certainly have put ourselves in a position to be better over these next few years. But ultimately, I say to myself, okay, we can be a crappy team with a roster that isn't really my roster for the next 2 or 3 seasons. I'm just kind of delaying the inevitable of letting those contracts run off, tearing this thing down to the studs and starting to build it up. So why not just do it now? That's ultimately where I came down on this, not expecting everyone to agree with it. Don't want everyone to agree with it. It's interesting to hear other perspectives and how other people play the game. But ultimately, I think like 15, 20 seasons from now, we're probably not going to be in a materially different place regardless. There's a part of me that says if we keep those contracts around, the Rockies are almost certainly one of the 2 or 3 worst teams in baseball for these next 2 or 3 seasons, winning 50, 55, 60 games rather than maybe 60, 65, 70 games these next few years if we're able to add a decent free agent or two with the money that we save. And if we keep those guys around, we actually are likely getting better picks in the draft for the next 2 or 3 seasons, which maybe makes it easier for me. So I can see both sides, appreciate the thoughts and the feedback from the worldwide scouting department. Ultimately, I did what I did. It is what it is, and we'll move forward. I hope those of you who have been following us are still interested in moving forward with the series, with the decisions we've made. But if not, respect your decision to spend your time watching something different that's more to your liking. Don't want people to do that, but I get that may happen. Ultimately, when I think about the numbers that we saved, as I said, almost 40 next year, a little over 30 2 years from now, and then under 20 in 2028. That's certainly the money to allow us to bring a good free agent on, which again could mean the difference between being a 58-win team and a 62 or 63-win team next year if we make a good decision. And it also, even if we don't put that money directly into a free agent, it certainly lets us jumpstart our investments in scouting and player development for the next few years more easily. So obviously I wouldn't have made those trades if I didn't think it was going to put the team into a better position. But I certainly don't think that those trades were painless in terms of some of the guys that we've given up, and we'll definitely be tracking what Mr. Dollander and Mr. Veen in particular do over these next few years, along with some of the highly regarded first-round draft choices that we happen to pass on in this year's draft. So always enjoy the interaction and appreciate it. I know that nobody's going to agree with every move that I make, but do appreciate hearing the different perspectives and thought I would just explain a little bit how I ultimately came down to doing what I did. Based on what people have told me, though, there is a part of me that thinks maybe next year when I take over a team, I just have to keep those contracts, or I make a rule where you've got to keep at least 2/3 of every contract that was on the books or something like that to make it more realistic. So, as I said, appreciate the thoughts, appreciate the feedback, but that's where I ultimately came down. In this episode, we're going to be focused on finishing up this miserable season for the Rockies, a 36-72 record as we sit here on August 1st. We are 2.5 games behind the White Sox for the worst record in baseball, and our goal over these final 2 months of the season is to hopefully get past the White Sox and not have the worst record in baseball when all is said and done. And we've gotten through the first 10 days of August, pretty meh results overall with a 4-5 record. Lost series at home to Pittsburgh and the Blue Jays before winning on the road against our division rival Diamondbacks. But honestly, a 4-5 meh record is sadly progress for these Colorado Rockies, so we will take it. Both third baseman Ryan McMahon and shortstop Mr. Tovar are back from the injured list and healthy, so we are largely dealing with the best foot we can put forward as far as our roster currently. And I have been asked by some viewers to check in on the minor league system and how some of our top prospects are doing a little more frequently. I normally do a deep dive at the end of every season on the minor league system, but try to be cognizant of that. And given that we only have 5 prospects in the top 200, it's not going to be too hard to hit the top prospects and let you know how they're doing. Center fielder Benny Montgomery, ranked the 195th prospect in baseball, has put up a 73 WRC plus at AA Hartford. He's almost 24 years old, so although we like his defense and we like his speed, the bat really needs to start to develop for him to ultimately be an impact player for us. Starting pitcher Chris McMahon, a 26-year-old, started the year in AA Hartford, where he was 2-2 with a 3.42 ERA, 1-2 with a 4.02 ERA, in 5 starts in AAA. Looks like best case scenario is he's kind of a back of the rotation type of pitcher. Honestly, not an extremely difficult or a different profile than some of the guys that we traded away in the trades that we talked about earlier, although those guys were generally younger and tended to have somewhat better stuff and somewhat lower control than Mr. McMahon has. Center fielder Robert Calaz is with Class A Fresno, hitting .234 with 8 homers and 26 ribbies, 104 WRC plus. He's a guy who maybe is borderline ready for high A ball, given that he's only 19 years old and he's borderline ready for high A. I think we probably just let him play out this season in Class A, and then likely we'll start him as a 20-year-old next season in high A ball. The 2 more premium prospects are Braden Nett, the pitcher that we traded for in the early stages of this playthrough. He was good, 3-2 with a 3.16 ERA and 12.5 strikeouts per 9 in AA Hartford. We promoted him to Albuquerque a week and a half or so ago at the start of the month, and he is 0-1 with an ERA of close to 8 in Albuquerque. Obviously a very small sample size. Still have a little bit of concern about his control, but you look at what his stuff and movement are and could be, and it's certainly not inconceivable, even though I don't view him as being a ace-type prospect, given his ratings and potential, that in the next season or 2 he could be the ace of our staff in Colorado. And last, but hopefully not least, our highest regarded prospect, Charlie Condon, number 30 overall. We've been playing him primarily at first base this year. We're going to try to get him as diversified as possible in terms of the positions he can play, but he's really a first baseman / corner outfielder. They had been playing him at third base, but that's not really something we would want to do. He's moved from Class A to High A to AA this year, and we finally have promoted him to the level where he's struggling, hitting .231 in 91 at-bats in AA, put up an 83 WRC plus, and he's been slightly below replacement level. So certainly not completely overwhelmed by AA, but obviously not incredibly successful quite yet. Thought there might be a chance that he ended up this year in AAA, but given the way he's performing in AA and the fact that his ratings indicate he's probably marginal for AAA right now, and he's actually been struggling a bit in AA, probably let Mr. Condon finish this year in AA for us, and then see what he looks like in the spring, hopefully after a successful trip to the development lab for him and some of these other guys that we've talked about. And unfortunately, after the meh/mediocre start to the month of August, we had a pretty crappy week here in the middle of August. Won just one game each on the road at St. Louis and then back home against Arizona. So a 2-5 record for the week. The one positive thing was, despite that 2-5 record, Eggy Rosario named the National League Batter of the Week, 10 for 21 with a couple of homers and 5 ribbies. Hasn't been particularly effective for us since we picked him up in that trade with the Padres, hitting .233 with an 82 WRC plus over 219 at-bats. And I guess when I was doing the prospect review, probably should have talked about the guy who was most interesting to most of you, since the worldwide scouting department helped influence our ultimate decision to pick Jamie Arnold out of Florida State, 4th overall in the draft this year. We sent him right to A-ball, and hasn't gone well so far. 0-1 record with a 6.75 ERA. He's allowed 4 home runs in 16 innings pitched. Trying to put a positive spin on things, he has struck out 25 batters in those 16 innings pitched. We had talked about hoping we could maybe get him up to high A-ball before the end of the year, but thus far he's been so unsuccessful in Fresno that looks like he may just stay at that level for the next couple of weeks before the seasons come to an end. And for a second straight week, we won a lone game in each of our series. 1-3 record at home against the Dodgers, 1-2 on the road against Pittsburgh. We've got games against the Astros and the Cubs before we get to September roster expansion. Taking a look at the standings at 44-87, we are still exactly 2.5 games behind the White Sox for the worst record in the major leagues. And things going slightly better here at the end of August. Took only 1 out of 3 against Houston, but we did win the first 2 games of the series against the Cubs. So we're finally going to win a series. Hopefully we'll be getting a sweep today. One negative piece of news, though, injury situation here. Anthony Molina, sore shoulder with a 5-week recovery. So his season is over. Going to finish with a 4.57 ERA over 45 1/3 innings. Saved 12 games for us with a 2-3 record. And we ended up losing the final game of the month to the Cubs. So although we won the series, missed out on the sweep. 11-18 record for the month of August. So much worse than we were in July, but sadly, that's better than June, May, or April, or March for that matter. Still have the worst pitching staff in the National League, ranking 15th in runs allowed. We have finally progressed a little bit to 11th in runs scored, but again, we're playing half of our games in Coors Field. So ranking 11th in runs scored, even though that's up from 14th, is still, in my mind, very unimpressive. At 47-90, though, we are only 1 game behind the White Sox for the worst record in baseball. The Pirates are 9.5 games ahead of us for the 3rd worst record in baseball. So realistically, over this last month of the season, it is a battle between the Rockies and the White Sox to find out who gets the most ping pong balls with their number on it in the upcoming lottery for the 2026 draft. And we've called up 2 new pitchers, given that it's September roster expansion. We'll take a look and see what 25-year-old Victor Vodnik, who does throw pretty hard and have ground ball tendencies, will do for us. He was up earlier this year, has been pretty brutal in AAA Albuquerque with an ERA of almost 7.5, but might as well see if he can do better. We also brought up Josan Mendez, another 25-year-old who put up a 7.42 ERA for us in AAA Albuquerque. You can tell our standards are low when guys with ERAs in the sevens in AAA are the September call-ups for this team, but the pitching is definitely not deep. And a day ago, when we ended up making the move on the injured list, we also brought up Jaden Hill, 25-year-old also. He was somewhat more effective with a 4.41 ERA as our closer in Albuquerque, and certainly to me has a more interesting skill set than the other two guys that we mentioned. Hopefully will be someone who can stick with us and be a relatively important arm out of the pen for us over the next few seasons. And we also brought up a couple of position players, reunited with Jordan Beck, who we had sent down to the minors. He was pretty productive when he was up with us the first time, hitting .270, 8 homers and 17 ribbies in 126 at-bats. But he got caught in a numbers game when McMahon and Tovar were getting healthy. Similar situation with Adel Amador, who we also have brought back up. He hit just a .165 in 139 major league at-bats with us, but he was still unhappy that he had been sent down to AAA, so hopefully we can get a little bit more offensively out of him over this last month of the season and have him feeling a little better about things as he heads into the off-season. And a 3-3 week to start the final month of the season. We lost 2 out of 3 at home against San Francisco, but then we did win 2 out of 3 at home against the Padres. As you would expect, we have been officially eliminated from playoff contention. That happened 5 days ago on September 3rd. Not that we were holding our breath waiting for that. With the 3-3 record over the last 6 games, though, we are now half a game ahead of the Chicago White Sox, the only other team that's been eliminated from playoff contention for the worst record in baseball. So we're half a game ahead of them to avoid having the worst record in baseball. And we got this latest week off to a good start, winning 2 straight in Chavez Ravine against the Dodgers. Unfortunately, we lost the final game of that series, and then were swept in a 4-game series in San Diego. Positively, the pitching doing a bit better for us. Although we lost every one of those games, we allowed 3 runs, 3 runs, 1 run, 5 run, allowed 3 runs in the final game against the Dodgers, and then we allowed 2 runs and 1 run in the wins against the Dodgers. So the pitching a lot more successful over this last week away from Colorado. Unfortunately, the end result was still a 2-5 record. Heading into the final couple weeks of the season, got the Marlins and the Angels at home, and then we will finish off in Seattle and at San Francisco. And if you're wondering how things set up for the final 2 weeks of the season, we are in a flat tie at 52-98 with the White Sox for the worst record in baseball. So a lot of excitement about who's going to be the worst team. We each have 12 games left, so we'll see what happens. And if we can win at least 3 of those games, we'll get to 55 wins and avoid having a winning percentage below .333, which was a pathetic goal of ours, but a goal nonetheless. And we'll see if we can play better than the White Sox over these final 12 games to avoid the embarrassment of having the worst record in all of baseball. And fortunately, those final 6 home games set up well for us against a couple of other very mediocre teams. We took 2 out of 3 against the Marlins, and then we took 2 out of 3 against the Angels. So 6 games left in the season, and we are still at 56-100 in a flat-footed tie with the White Sox for the worst record in the league. Unfortunately, we were just swept by the Mariners while the White Sox won 1 of the 3 games in their series. So a game behind the White Sox with 3 games left as we try to avoid the worst record in Major League Baseball here in 2025. And after extending our losing streak to 4 games, dropping the first game of the final series of the year in San Francisco, we did close out the season with 2 straight wins over the Giants. Unfortunately, it was just not enough. We finish at 58 and 104, so the White Sox were 1 game better than us this year at 59 and 103. We did at least avoid a historically bad season like the White Sox had a year ago. I believe the Rockies were 7 and 36 when we took them over, so that means that we were 51 and 68, so still bad with them. The 429 winning percentage that we put together over the final 2/3 or so of the season after we took over would have been better than the White Sox, the Royals, and the Pirates. So we were, regardless of the fact that we played a little bit better after we took over, we were undoubtedly one of the worst teams in baseball this year, as we kind of anticipated. Taking a look at the final team statistics, 11 and 14 in the month of September. Our 58 and 104 record was 4 worse than Pythagorean expectations. Ended up improving to 9th in the National League in runs scored, so made a little bit of progress there over the past several months. Still, not surprisingly, the worst pitching staff in the National League, allowing 886 runs. And you can see we were at or near the bottom in every primary pitching category, except for our bullpen earned run average, which was the middle of the pack. And with that, we will call it an episode. Next time around, we will do our annual roster review, do a little bit of a deeper dive on the farm system, and find out who ends up winning the World Series here in 2025. And we'll get to the off season next time around and kind of see where the team stands so we can start making some decisions, taking a look at the playoffs and the playoff tree. The Tigers and the Yankees with the first round byes in the American League. The Guardians and the Twins will be fighting to face off against the Tigers. The Astros and the Mariners will get a chance to go up against the Yankees. Phillies and Padres with your byes in the National League. 2 very high-powered rosters. The Dodgers and the Braves will be facing off for the right to face the Phillies. And the Reds and the Cardinals in a matchup of NL Central teams will be competing to go up against your NL West winning San Diego Padres. And as I said, we'll find out what happens in these playoffs and get ready for the beginning of the offseason next time around. Until our next episode, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.